Welcome to 5 Minutes in a Cup of Joe. Joseph Ashcraft Jr. Let's get started. Well, the NFL draft again has come and it has gone. And now that all 7 rounds have came and they have passed, let's take some quick moment of reflection on what we witnessed over this past Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Well, the first thing that immediately came out to me was the number one pick in the draft, Cam Ward going to the Titans, and Cam Ward has a bright future. I know there should be a lot of people out there that are upset with how he took himself out of a bowl game at halftime because of his, I guess, for perspective, injury prospects. With that being said, the Titans got a good quarterback in Cam Ward, and it is my hope that Cam Ward will be a good quarterback for the Titans going forward. What does that mean for Will Levis? I'm not really sure. I guess Will Levis will be in mop-up duty going forward. It was impressive to me how early on the run happened. It's typically a position that these teams that are in the low rounds typically make a run on. And it seemed like this year, wide receiver, after Ashton Jeanty at running back went to the Vegas Raiders, was the position that the early draft and the run was made on. So McMillan and was also drafted early on. It was my hope that the Cowboys would draft a number 2 wide receiver opposite CeeDee Lamb, and that did not happen. But the Cowboys did draft a guard at Alabama. It's my hope that Cowboys usually do pick well when it comes to drafting offensive linemen. Will he be the next Larry Allen? That will be something that Larry Allen's the greatest offensive lineman ever, in my opinion. So big holes to fill, but good job selecting the lineman to replace Zach Martin. And you can't run the ball, you can't throw the ball if you don't have a good offensive line. Someone should ask Andrew Luck about that. So, but the thing I want to talk about now is the sudden fall from grace of Shedeur Sanders. Travis Hunter, his teammate, went number 2 to Jacksonville. And I think Travis Hunter has the potential to be a generational player. So I commend Jacksonville for drafting up and taking him. Now, it is my hope that he does get his opportunity to play both sides of the ball. And imagine the fantasy points someone like Travis Hunter can get you. But that being said, the fall of Shedeur Sanders all the way to the 5th round. When he went through round number 1, I was not drafted when a lot of people saw him as a potential first-round pick. Immediately people started screaming something's wrong. When the Giants have 2 selections in the first round, and they draft Abdul Carter, and they draft quarterback Jackson Dart, and they leave Shedeur Sanders on the board, that's when you knew that he was suddenly in free fall mode. The only thing I could really compare this to was when Aaron Rodgers was projected to be number 1 pick in '05, other than Alex Smith, and he fell to Green Bay near the end of the first round in '05. That being said, if you are a Cleveland Browns fan, I think you are happy with the haul for Travis Hunter. And I think you should be happy with the selection of Sanders, even though they've already got Joe Flacco on their roster. They're going to have 4 quarterbacks on the roster. Will Shedeur Sanders make it through training camp? Will Shedeur Sanders play in preseason? Those are all things that remain to be seen, and we will find out pretty soon on that. Cowboys did get a couple of running backs, but they didn't get the big home hitting running back. They got the running back Blue from Texas, who I like, and so we'll see how that turns out. Matthew Golden, the wide receiver, went to Green Bay in the first round. And overall, if you are a fan of the draft means you're that much closer to football season. The schedule will be released here pretty soon. And then once that happens, you can almost smell the grass of training camp, preseason, and then football, week 1 of the regular season, coming up sooner than we realize. This has been 5 Minutes in a Cup of Joe. I'm Joseph Ashcraft Jr. Please visit pznsports.com. Thanks for listening.
Hey, America. My name is William Hunt. I'm from North Pole, Alaska. I'm running for President of the United States because for 50 years I have been voting Republican Democrats, and we are taking away the future of our future generations. And we need to change that. So I decided to run for President of the United States in 2028 to convince America they should vote differently. That a Republican or Democrat should start voting for people who has a plan for America. Okay.
Welcome to the Live Before podcast. How you doing tonight, Tracy?
What's going on, brother? It's been a crazy, crazy week, man, for everybody. Everybody I've dealt with this week has just had just a rough week. I don't know what it is. The planets must be aligned or something.
I want to thank Joseph Ashcraft Jr. for doing the 5 minutes and a cup of Joe. I want to thank William Hunt for sending his 1 minute segment as well. And I'm excited, man. Excited for tonight, man. Excited for the future. And
Yeah,
uh, excited to have our guest on, Joe Atkins, man. How are you doing tonight, man?
I've been doing all right. How's everybody out there?
Doing good, man.
we're doing, yeah, we're doing good,
Appreciate you
bro.
being on, brother.
So we got some exciting news without spilling the beans too much, Joe, until I guess you would call it a release date. Kind of drop some hints about what's going on. That's what's new, as far as what you, I, Seth, have kind of put together here, and what the plans are for the future.
Well, we'll be back on the air shortly.
Yeah, I mean, everybody already knows about the Facebook page, pretty much.
Yeah. Now there's a new radio station coming to town, and I think it's gonna do well.
That's right. Everybody get a chance to go to. I guess what is it? Seth Nighthawk on the Facebook page, Nighthawk Radio.
Nighthawk Radio on Facebook. Go give us a follow. We're at 117 right now, I believe.
So, in less than a week. So,
yeah. And at 1,000 followers, we're going to be doing a giveaway.
Yeah, and we've already got several. Well, I won't say several. There's 4 or 5 shows on there. We're dropping them almost daily. So yeah, you get a chance to go over. We've got some really good interviews with Jimmy Haunted. Talks about his new book. We've got Bill Hunt. Who else is over there? Keith Age.
Sci-Fi Channel star Keith Age.
That's right. And then we got Brittany Nappy talking about serial killers.
That was a fun episode.
That is a fun episode. And so you guys get a chance. Yeah, absolutely. You guys get a chance to go over to Nighthawk Radio on the Facebook page. But soon, very soon, probably within the next 2-3 weeks, we're going to be dropping a different way of doing podcast. So I guess that's a good way to put it, right, Joe?
Yeah, that sounds about right.
And see, our background, Joe and I especially, we came from a radio station. Dave gave us kind of our start. So we appreciate Dave for that. But it was Paramania Radio, if anybody was familiar with that. They had a lot of good shows over there, including us. And, we had guys over. Chad McKenzie was on there with Paranormally Correct. Jimmy Pettinino had the Haunted Chronicles. We talked about that during his interview a little bit, and Brock and Dave had their show. There were several different shows over there, but we really got kind of our start there. That's kind of where it was at back in 2013. And I appreciate Dave and Jenny and who Brock, and there were several of them, Chad, who kind of opened that door for us.
We had a lot of fun back in those days.
It was.
And I should say, the new deal that we're going to have in a couple of 3 weeks, it's going to be a reawakening. That's for sure.
Yeah, it's kind of going to be a reboot of what we used to do.
Yeah.
reawakening is a very good way of putting it. So, yeah, man, I'm so excited. This is something Joe and I have talked about off and on for probably 10 years at least. Doing, and then we kind of got hooked up with Seth, and Seth kind of gave us that extra boost, to give us the motivation for all of us to get together and kind of put this thing together. And, I appreciate Seth for, reaching out to me, and, I reached out to Joe, and we've kind of got together and collaborated on this thing and going to make it happen. So, super excited, super excited. And it's just it's just going to be like back in the old days, when podcasts were actually at its infancy, really. And I tell people all the time that show that Joe and I did years ago. Everybody said, "Well, why didn't you get monetized? Why didn't you get money for?" Back then there was no such thing as doing that.
They didn't monetize. They didn't monetize shows back then.
No, not like that, because we were, at the very beginning of this thing, and I was talking to Jimmy about that. His show, and he reminisced about how you and I talked him into pretty much starting his show, The Haunted Chronicles, which blew up on Paramania Radio.
Yeah, it took us a long time to talk Jimmy into coming on the air, and we got him on our show one night, and finally got him talking.
Yeah, he's a little shy. He's a little shy.
And then after the show that we had him on, I don't know. I guess the wheels got to turning with him too. And about I don't know what, 3 weeks to a month later, we had the Haunted Chronicles, and he started his show up, and like you said, it just blew up.
Oh my God, he had a following like nobody's business, man. I mean, we did those shows live, and that way, you could chat with people. You could read the chat room. They could ask you questions and all kinds of stuff. But man, his show every night or every week, we did one show a week, but his show was just exploded with listeners, in a matter of just weeks.
Yeah, he's almost got a cult following now.
He kind of does. Of course, I told him he was kind of somewhat of a celebrity. He's been on ABC, Good Morning America. He's been on A&E. He's been on History Channel. He's been on Netflix. Now he's wrote this book, and he's been on. I don't know what it's called, but if you guys remember the Brady Bunch, Cindy Brady, the little girl, she's got her own podcast show, and he's been on her show several times. So he's kind of on Coast to Coast. He was on Coast to Coast AM. And gave us a shout out, which was really kind of cool. I appreciated that. But he's got it's like a cult following with him,
He's an interesting person, that's for sure.
I like to talk to him. He's one of them Yankee people. He's got them northern accents, but I like to talk to him.
We got the Appalachian accent.
Yeah, he can't understand what we say, and vice versa. So it's okay. It kind of works out.
Now, who's some of your guys' favorite interviews?
Don Neal.
What about you, Joe?
For sure, Don. Yeah. Don was a lot of fun to talk to. He, of course, he's a pastor at his church, and I guess he's got, even Don said this about himself. Don has the gift of gab.
Yeah.
And I mean, he on top of that, he was one of the easiest interviews I ever had.
Oh my gosh, it's unreal how easy.
He would just ask a question. Once you asked the question to him, you didn't have to, you have like some guests come on, you kind of have to poke and prod them to get them to go on. But not Don, man. He would go on with the story, and you just had to sit back with your hands behind your head and just let him go.
Listen, you ask
the best interviews I ever had.
You ask him a question and hit the mute button and just let him go.
Yeah.
You mute your microphone and just let him go. And it is the easiest. One of the best interviews we ever had never got heard. It was Ken Gerhart. We were talking cryptids. Oh, and back to Don. If anybody was interested in Bigfoot, go to Don Bigfoot Neal Facebook page, and he is I don't know. To me, he's basically the spokesman for the KBRO, which is the Kentucky Bigfoot Research Organization. And he's got all things Bigfoot on there. He's got videos, he's got audios, he's got witnesses, he's got reports. If you're interested in Bigfoot or a Bigfoot, look on Facebook. He's got Don Bigfoot Neal. So there's a shameless plug for you, Don. And you know what's sad? He don't do podcast anymore. And man, I think we need to reach out to him and really, really kind of get him,
Remotivated.
maybe, out of retirement, at least to do just one show anyway.
I agree.
So,
always enjoyed talking to him.
Oh yeah, but back to Ken Gerhart. Joe and I, Ken Gerhart's been on Monster Quest, several different shows on History Channel and this and that. And we did about an hour and a half video interview with him, and the audio on it was so bad that we couldn't even put it out. But when we were doing it, the audio wasn't bad. It was fine. But when we went to replay it, it cut in, cut out, shut down, in and out, and it was terrible. But that was one of the good interviews that we had that nobody ever heard. We couldn't even put it out. It was that bad.
Yep, technical issues. We had gremlins.
Yeah. And then we did we might be one of the very first people to go remotely and do a live podcast at a haunted place, in a haunted house. At the Seton House. We did a live podcast there as people were ghost hunting. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, we had two groups of investigators that night, plus us, which that was Chad there that night?
Chad was there, yes.
So that made the four of us that was there. It was
you, me, Chad, Emily, and I thought there was somebody else, but it might not have been.
David was there.
That's right. Dave come all the way from Indiana from Paramania Radio. He was so interested in it. We were doing it live. He came all the way to Kentucky from Indiana just to kind of be a part of this thing.
Yep.
But that was a lot of fun. That's when I was told I was going to die. Do you remember that? When they were doing the spirit box at the dining room table. And let me set the scene. I mean, this house is huge. It's beautiful. It's just amazing house. The dining room table is one of those that you see almost in TV. It seats like 16 people. I mean, it's huge. And we were all sitting around this table, and they were doing the spirit box, and it was going through the channels like it does, and da 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 da. And I never heard it, but Chad McKenzie was sitting right beside me, and he looked at me like he'd seen a ghost behind me, and he said, "Did you hear that?" I was like, "No. What do you mean? Yeah, I hear it, but I don't." He said, "Kill Tracy," and I was like, "I didn't hear." I said, "What?" I didn't hear nothing like that. And then another person said, "Yeah, I heard it too." And then another one said, "Oh yeah, that's what that said." I was thinking, that's great. It's my last day on earth. That's awesome.
Well, nothing like a ghostly death threat.
Did you remember that?
I wasn't in the room when that happened.
Okay. Yeah. So, yeah. But, I mean, it's that's kind of the highlights of being a part of that group and Paramania Radio. And like I said, I appreciate Dave and Jenny and them guys for giving us a shot and getting us started in this thing.
Now here we are again.
Yeah, but we're a little different this time.
Yeah.
I think we'll be running the show this time. So, but yeah, you guys just kind of stay tuned, or keep looking at the Facebook page. We're going to release what we're going to release soon, within the next couple of weeks. We're going to have there's going to be many shows that you're going to get to listen to, very different varieties. Everything from ghost hunting to Bigfoot to serial killers to We may even have some sports stuff on here, get some Joe Ashcraft on here, and Ian talks with a guy that may want to come in and do like a 15 or 20-minute thing about racing every week, if you guys are interested in racing. So yeah, man, just stay tuned and be prepared to listen to some pretty cool stuff.
And we're going to have music too.
That's right. We will have some music. We may have an entire music show eventually. It's got to go through the licensures and all that stuff, and get everything legal so we don't get sued. So yeah, we're going to eventually do that, and I'm excited about that because I'm a music guy of all sorts, other than the stuff that sucks.
Well, by the time it's all said and done and everything's up and running, I think the goal is just to have a regular radio station.
Yeah.
With music, talk shows.
It'll be different. Yeah, it'll be a variety. It won't be just one. A lot of stations are just talk, or a lot of stations are just music. But we're going to kind of have that mix, a little bit for everybody, because I like them both. And like I said before, many times I'm a radio guy. I like AM radio. I like shortwave radio. I like listening to that stuff. And I think a lot of other people do too. They just don't know where or how to find it. And that we're going to try to get them, the best of all those worlds right here.
And two, there will be a schedule to go by, so you'll know if there's, any one specific thing you want to listen to. After it gets up and running, you can just you can go online, look at the schedule, and you'll be able to, catch whatever show you like, and you'll know when to listen.
Right. Yeah, and we're going to put out, like, one show will be out the same time, same day every week. And we're going to have shows every day, but they'll be on the same day, same time, every time they're out. So that's kind of cool. That way people know, where to find their favorite podcast and, their favorite music or whatever they want. So that's kind of how that's going to work so far. And, we're kind of new at this. We're going to probably be changing as we go, but we want to be as stable as we possibly be. We don't want you to show up for a show that's not going to be there.
Right. So bear with us through the growing pains for a little bit, and we'll get there, and hopefully you'll enjoy what you hear.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. All right, Seth, what's so funny?
He gone.
He's there. Yeah, silence is golden for some reason.
Nah, I'm here, man. I ain't gonna say what's funny. It's just something.
So, for those of you that don't
But
know,
just so everybody knows, when we say we're gonna play something, we're gonna play something.
that's right, exactly. That's right. So, but for those of you that
yeah,
took a while, but it finally, the light bulb moment happened. So
it did.
Okay,
Yeah.
so
Everybody out there in radio land and internet land. So if we tell you we're going to play bebop music, we're not going to play classical. And
That's
we're not
right.
going to lose. We're not going to lose the file and forget to hit the record button either.
That's right. So we done went through that once. That's why we're doing this on our own, so that we don't make silly mistakes like that. Something simple.
And we can show people how real radios ran.
That's right. We need to shut up before we get in trouble. So for those of you that don't know, Joe and I worked all the way, probably in every state, driving trucks across the country. And we have got so many trucking stories. But I want to run this one by you, Joe. Get your opinion on, and this is not uncommon. I don't even really know why this made the news, because things like this happen all the time. It says the headlines, AP headlines is cha-ching, millions of dimes spill into the Texas highway after a truck rolls over. So Alvord, Texas. Millions of coins spilled into a Texas highway after a tractor trailer hauling $8 million in dimes rolled over in an accident. The spillage led to the closure of a portion of the southbound lanes of US 287 in Alvord for about a half a day as workers got on their hands and knees to pick up the coins, in addition to using brooms, shovels, and large industrial vacuums. The tractor trailer rolled into its side about 5:30 a.m. Tuesday after veering off the road and overcorrecting. According to the Texas Department of Public Safety, the highway reopened at 7 p.m. The driver and passenger were transported to the hospital with injuries that were not life-threatening. It says Alvord is 80 miles northwest of Dallas. So, this things like this isn't uncommon, Joe. I mean, trucks turn over all the time, but $8 million worth of dimes. I mean, that's a lot of freaking dimes. But you know as well as I do, when they decommission money like they do occasionally, I know of several instances where there was a trucking company that was hauling pennies, and I mean a tractor trailer load of pennies, back to Colorado to the mint. And that's not uncommon. And I think what throws people is the $8 million. Well, in our world, in trucking world, that's really not a lot of money as far as what you're hauling in the back of your truck.
Right.
Now, don't get me wrong, $8 million is a lot of money, but Joe and I have hauled that much in a half a trailer load.
Yeah.
So, we hauled for a pharmaceutical company, and a lot of times we hauled cocaine. And I mean millions of dollars.
Yeah, and just about a half a dozen totes?
That's it. That's it. And we would have armed security following us, but you would never know they were there.
Yep.
And these guys took this very serious. I mean, it wasn't nothing to go pick up this stuff. And the criteria is you better have 8, you better have a full tank of fuel, and you better have peed, because you're not stopping for 300 miles at least. And we'd have unarmed security detail in front and back, and nobody would know it but us.
And you don't stop at the scale houses, you just go on.
That's a free pass right there. So, but we got several trucking stories, but one of the funniest ones at Joe, we were sitting at the dock and they were loading this stuff. And one of those security guards come over and we was talking to him, and you always knew which one the high dollar stuff was in because it was in a certain color tote. And they were loading them things on our truck, and Joe turned and looked at that security guard and he said, "How much that cocaine you putting in there?" And that security guard, I mean, you could see the blood drain out of his face because we weren't supposed to know what was in them totes. And I don't even remember how we found out what was in them, but oh yeah, he got weak-kneed and was about to pass out because we knew what was in those totes. And it was just struck me funny that, we haul all that stuff and we are not supposed to know what's in the back of them. But yeah.
We were reading a bill of lading that we was reading a bill of lading one time, and it was listed on there what was in the tote. And it was the only time that we ever seen that, and I just kind of kept it in the back of my mind. I knew what was in those totes.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a good one. That was funny. Now, with hauling that kind of stuff, we were up in I think it was, yeah, it was Buffalo, New York. And we were up there close to the Canadian border, and they could ping our truck and see where we were at within, like 20 miles, 10 miles, something like that.
Oh, that was the stick that we called our dispatchers and played.
Yes. So I called dispatch because, I mean, I like to pull pranks, and that's what I do. So I call them up and I said, y'all ain't going to believe this. I said, we made a wrong turn. We went to go to up into Canada. We were supposed to be going to Buffalo. I said, somehow we got on the wrong road and ended up in Canada. And when we went across the border, they ran them dogs down the side of that truck, and that truck's full of cocaine. And dear God, the dog went nuts. His eyes started rolling back in his head, and he's just going nuts. I said, now they got Joe over in this other room asking him questions. They about to come over here. I said, y'all need to do something quick and get up here and fix this problem. Well, before, I could tell them it was a joke, all I heard was, I'll call you back. And I was going, no, wait. Click. I was like, uh-oh, they're getting ready to make some phone calls.
And then the next thing you know, the little red light comes on the Qualcomm system.
Yeah, it tells you you're being pinged.
They were pinging the truck with a satellite to see where we were at. And we were close enough to where
it looked like we were in Canada. Yeah.
The alarm bells went off in dispatch, and they started calling the headquarters.
Oh, yeah, they were calling corporate, and then the corporate was getting ready to call the U.S. Department of whoever, and it was about to get big over me being stupid. So I finally get back through to them, and our dispatcher says, now, run me through this story again. And so me being me, instead of just ending it right there, I go ahead and ag this story on. And I told him the story again. And I said, that dog went nuts. I said, started biting at the tires and sitting down and rolling over and everything. I said, next thing you know, it jumped up on that customs agent's leg and started going to town. And then I heard silence. It was crickets. And all I heard her say was, you SOB. You SOB, you. Are you serious? This is a joke? Are you kidding me? And I started laughing. Joe started laughing. Then she started laughing. She said, you have no idea what channels we're getting ready to go through to get you guys out of there. So,
we would call, our dispatchers were great at that company. They were all
probably some of the best I worked for.
And we ended up being friends, other than colleagues, we were friends.
Right.
And we would be driving somewhere in the middle of the night, 3:00 in the morning, we'd be on the road doing, just going somewhere. And we would call our dispatchers in the middle of the night at the house and wake them up and ask them stupid stuff. Just stupid stuff.
Well, they were married. I'll go ahead and just use their first names. It was Tracy and Tara. And they were married. And Tara was really the boss. She ran the show, but Tracy was her right-hand man. Right. Well, as y'all know, that's my name. So I'd get him by himself and I'd say, hey, I said, when you and Tara are doing your thing at night, and I said, and you're all mad and passionately in love, he'd say, yeah. I'd say, what's it like when she screams my name? He said, man, that's screwed up.
I said, yeah, that's messed up.
So, but they had a great sense of humor. It was funny. It was good to work for them. So, yeah. And then we were coming out of South Texas one time, and I was asleep. And I hear Joe holler, it's the middle of the night. And I'm like, usually he don't wake me up for no reason. And I said, what is it? He said, man, you got to come up here and watch this. And I was like, watch what? And he said, you're fixing to see, you ain't never seen a wreck like we're fixing to see. And that kind of piqued my interest. And I was like, maybe I want to see this. So I get up there, and there's two Mexican trucks, two Mexican drivers, and they're in front of us. And they're, I assume, cussing each other in Spanish on the CB, going crazy. And son, they were going down the road, I-20, and they were slamming into each other, going down the road at 70, 75 mile an hour, cussing each other like a storm. But yeah, the funny part of that story was Joe said, man, you need to come up here. You ain't never seen a wreck like we're fixing to see.
And that just rolls over into the new law that has taken effect.
Yeah.
And that was in Arkansas, started it. Arkansas started.
Yep, that's where it started.
And now an executive order has came down from the White House that you don't know how to speak English, read English, or write English, you're going to lose your seat.
Yep, immediately.
I am 100% on board with that because, I mean, if you've got, and I'm going to drop it, Schneider National, Swift Transportation, all those big mega carriers, they can't get drivers because their turnover rate is so high.
That's right.
They can't get enough drivers. So they're hiring folks from out of country and from different countries. I mean, not Mexico. I'm talking from the Middle East, from Russia, from the Ukraine.
A lot of Somalis. A lot of Somalis.
Yeah, Somalia. Yeah. And they're hiring all these guys from out of country to come in here and drive. And now this has been a law. The FMCSA, it's been a law for a long time.
Which is a Federal Motor Carriers.
Right. You've got to know English, period. Just to read the road signs, you got to know English.
That's right. And you know what? Back in the day when I first started, I started driving truck in 1996. I quit in 2018. Started in 1996. And that was a requirement. It said you had to read, write, and understand English to get a commercial driver's license in this country.
Well, it's always been that way.
That's right.
But it's always been the law. It's always been the law. But for some reason, the higher ups that give out CDLs, whatever state you're in, and the state police that grade you on your final test to get your CDL, they're just turning a blind eye.
That's right. Well, the reason is I think there is so much freight that has to be moved in this country, and then there's not enough drivers to do it. So they're taking, they're advertising, hey, come to America, go through a 3-week training course, we'll strap 80,000 pounds to the back of you and go, 2,500 miles. Good luck. Don't kill anybody.
Here's the thing about that, though. They're breaking their own law.
I agree.
Well, finally, they're getting it straightened out, hopefully. But
they started with Arkansas.
And the thing of it is, there are so many Americans that are up in arms over that. Well, it shouldn't matter if they can read or write. Yeah, it matters. And I'll tell you why. You got folks going out there and getting on these side roads, and you got an overpass at 12.5. Well, a truck's 13.6.
Yep.
And the only thing there you got to know what's coming up is a road sign. Well, if Boppy Mufafa can't read the road sign that the bridge coming up is 12.6, he's going to keep going, right? And what's going to happen? He's going
to
knock the entire top off his trailer. There goes the load.
The bottom of the bridge.
At the bottom of the bridge.
Which means they got to shut the bridge down.
Yeah. And the insurance company's going to have to pay out some big money for the load they had just lost.
So let me put it to you this way. What does a stop sign say in America? Spell it.
STOP.
What does a stop sign say in Mexico?
ALTO.
Alto. That's right. There's two totally different things.
Yep.
So if I've been to Canada, I've been to Mexico. I mean, I've learned how to, read enough road signs to know what the Spanish is in road signs. But that's true. You go down South Texas in Laredo and Nuevo Laredo and Calexico, California, and all that down through there. Tijuana, and the stop signs quit saying STOP and they say ALTO, which means stop alto. So it is very important that you can read and write and communicate to drive a truck across the country in America. And if you remember back in the late 90s, mid 90s, maybe early 90s, when they did a NAFTA agreement and they allowed Mexican trucks to come to the United States, the law said that they could bring freight from Mexico to the United States and pick up freight from the United States and go back to Mexico. They could not come up to America and say pick a load up in Texas and take it to California, and then from California to say Arkansas. All they could do is come into the States, drop a load, pick up a load, and go back to Mexico. But now it's not like that.
Nope, they come up here and run freight from state to state.
Right. And you know what? I'm not against people, coming in here and from other countries and trucking's a good living. I made a really good living driving a truck. In fact, I'm retired from it at 50 some years old. I'm not saying, but I got a birthday coming up anyway. So, but I made a really good living doing it, and they can too. But you got to abide by the same rules that I did.
Right. And I listened to an interview earlier today. They were talking about that, and they were like, "Well, how do they get from one place to another if they can't read the language?" Well, what it is they'll put GPS in their trucks.
Yep.
Well, the bad thing about GPS and tractor trailers is if you follow that thing, a lot of times, turn for turn, you'll end up in a holler somewhere and can't get back out.
On a dirt road somewhere.
Dirt road, stuck, and causing all kinds of chaos.
Listen, where I live, I can't tell you how many Swift trucks I've helped back out of the road, because you can go out my road a good ways. But after you pass my house, another probably 3 miles, there is a hill that's probably a 12% grade with a switchback in it that a tractor trailer cannot make. And they followed their GPS trying to get to Walmart, and they can't make it. And now they have to back up about a mile to get turned around. And I can't tell you how many trucks I've helped back out of that, but it's mostly guys who follow their GPS without looking at the map. And I don't even know that truckers use maps anymore, but I ran GPS. It was great. It was wonderful, but I always compared it to the map. And your commercial, what was that map called, Joe? It was a commercial map, but it was for big trucks.
That was the Rand McNally truckers.
Right. And it had all the routes that you could go on as a truck, being, 70 feet long, 80,000 pounds. But these guys don't do that. They just punch it in the GPS and say, okay, let's go. And off they go. Next thing you know, they're in the backwoods of West Virginia trying to make a switchback on a dirt road that's big enough for one car, let alone a tractor trailer.
And something else that, now this is getting off the subject of foreign drivers. These younger drivers, they don't run CB radios anymore.
Then big mistake.
I agree.
And that could be your lifeline.
They think they don't need CBs because they got cell phones. And, well, okay, that's cool. But you can always lose cell service. As long as that CB's working, you'll never lose service.
And how many times that you can be going down the road and somebody get on the CB and tell you, hey, there's a backup up there, slow down.
Right.
Or, there's a wreck up there, traffic stopped, and you're barreling down through there, I tell myself 80, 85, 90 mile an hour. And, if you don't know that traffic stopped and you're heavy, 80,000, 79,000 pounds, it takes you a while to stop. And the last thing you want to do is come up on stop traffic. So that CB, I mean, it's a lifeline. If you break down, I know people got cell phones, but like you said, if you lose cell service, it's there to, hey, get on the CB and holler at somebody and say, hey, if you would call my company or call road service or something and let them know I'm here. Uh, there's just so many, the CB was a lifeline. And on top of that, it was a communication device because if you're going across, a state and it's 2 o'clock in the morning, you're getting a little sleepy and, you find somebody to talk to that's going the same way and you guys could talk for, 6-7 hours, to keep yourself awake.
And something else too, used to, I don't think they carry them as much anymore as they used to, but state police used to have CBs in their cars and they always stayed on Channel 9. Everybody
That's
knew
right.
Channel 9. That was the channel to get a hold of the police if you needed them.
That's exactly right. In fact, I used that one time. I was over in Richmond, Virginia, and I was going across 64 headed towards Norfolk. And I would just be bopping along out there about 70 miles an hour. And it was late at night. It's probably midnight, 1 o'clock. And there was a couple of cars coming up in the fast lane, and one was passing me. And it just barely got past me and shot over in front of me. Dang near took my bumper off. So I flashed my lights at him a couple of times just to let him know how unhappy I was. Well, what he didn't know is there was a state trooper directly behind him. And I switched over to Channel 9 real quick and I said, hey, Smokey Bear, you going to let that dude get by with that? Because I could have killed him. And no sooner than I said that, he flipped them blue lights on and pulled that guy over. So, it worked. It worked. But it really is a lifeline. And I don't understand why these guys don't run them anymore. Now, on the flip side of that, if you pull into a truck stop at 6-7 o'clock in the evening and you're trying to back into a spot that's usually at that time of day, if a spot's open, it's because nobody can get in it. It's that tight. And you're trying to get in this thing and people are on the CB either trying to help you or telling you how bad you suck. So, 90% of the time I hit a truck stop, I just turn my CB off until I left.
Yeah, or you got people on there advertising.
That's right. Anybody need any commercial company, which is lot lizards.
Oh, that was so funny.
Yeah, people who don't know who lot lizards are, they're pretty much hookers, and they advertise on CBs, and they come and what made me mad is they'd come and knock on your door at 3 a.m. when you're trying to sleep, and you're thinking something bad's happened or you're in the way or something. You can look out there and there's a girl standing down there, and you just like, daggone it, and she's like, "You ain't company?" I was like, "No, I was asleep. Leave me alone." And then I'll be, it used to be really bad. You'd get woke up 3 or 4 times a night. And now I think they've cracked down on them so hard. Not only the law, but I think the truck stops are getting sick of it. And, when I was finishing up my trucking career, you still ran across them, but nothing like you did, 15 years, 20 years ago.
I read somewhere online. There was a truck stop in Indianapolis about a month ago that they were having an issue with them, and
the Flying J, or not Flying J. It was the Pilot truck stop going across 465.
Yeah, and they were all teenagers.
Yeah. If you remember, I know you know where that's at. It's where there's an Indian restaurant right there. And it's kind of a tight little pilot to get in and out of it. But there's an Indian restaurant right there across the interstate's a Flying J.
Yeah. Yeah, but that was a bad situation there because they were hauling them out there left and right.
Yeah, they were underage hookers. Yeah.
That's the bad thing of it. They were all just young ones.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, do you remember, I can't remember the year. Had to be the early 2000s where they had that serial killer trucker running around and that yellow Peterbilt, and they looked for him forever. But he was taking these girls. He would pick them up and do his thing, and then kill them, and then dump them at rest areas.
Yeah, he would haul them 300 or 400 miles away.
Yeah, yeah, and they finally caught him down there in I think it was Knoxville, is where they got him at. But I read a statistic where it said there are more truck driver serial killers than any other profession in the world.
And never get caught.
Never get caught. I mean, you snatch a girl up in Texas today and drop her body tomorrow in North Carolina. I mean, how that's tough to find.
No.
So, but yeah, it's the trucking was fun for a long time, and then it got not fun. They regulated everything so bad that it turned into a job then, when before it wasn't a job. It was like I was going on vacation and I was getting paid. Now, mind you, there was many, many times that, trucker Mondays are Sundays. Truckers start working on Sundays.
Right.
There were many, many times I didn't want to leave on Sunday.
We always got home on Friday evening and left on Sunday.
That's right. Well, that's if you got to do that every weekend. I mean, there was many times I stayed out. Shoot, there was one time I stayed out all summer. I never come home. I left. It was probably around April or May, and didn't come home till it was dang near September.
Well, that's fine too. I mean, a lot of folks, they like it that way.
I made a lot of money doing that.
They like to go out and stay a month or two at a time, and that's fine if that's what you want to do.
Sure.
And and there's a lot of these jobs that get you home every day. So, and the most of the jobs that we were out 5 days and went home for 2.
Yeah.
That was most of what we did.
Right.
Yeah.
And then I got hooked up on a gig where I was running out of Cincinnati, going to Denver, Colorado. I was making 4 trips out there and back, and then I'd go home for a week. And that was pretty sweet. It was a pretty nice little gig, except for the wintertime. I don't know if anybody's ever been across Kansas in an ice storm, but it sucks really bad. In fact, it got so bad, I finally pulled off and found a place to park, and I still had the CB on. This is back when people ran CBs. And old boy come on the truck or on the CB, and he said, "You know what?" He said, "I've been driving for 13 years, never had an accident, and I just had one of the slowest accidents you ever saw." I said, "What happened, driver?" He said, "I was just sitting here on the road, and where the road is bank, I slid right off into the ditch." So, and I mean, and and on top of everything, they got the law. The DOT is so hard on these guys now with these new electronic laws. And before, we ran paper logs. You screwed up that day, rip it out and throw it out, and start it again. But I was down in West Virginia one time, and you know how them those coal truck drivers, man, they haul heavy.
Oh yeah, they're 200,000
Easy. So this whole boy come on the CB, and he said, "Well, got me for 82,000." He said, "I'm done. I'm going home for the day." And I said, "Well, driver, that ain't too bad. You just 2,000 over." He said, "No, I was 82,000 over." I said, "Yeah, I believe I'd go home too."
The norm with the coal truck industry back then is, of course, with the Obama revolution, they got rid of all the coal-fired power plants, so that killed the coal industry. It wasn't nothing, 110,000 pound truck going up and down the road.
Oh yeah.
And that was kind of permitted too, really.
Yeah, sure it was. Well, if you remember, we hauled steel coils out of Ashland. And, that's one of the most dangerous things you could haul is a coil. a coil of steel because all of the weight is right there in the center of the trailer. It's not distributed throughout the trailer. It's right there in the center. And we were permitted to haul 62,000 pound coils. And I'm telling you right now, you haul a 60,000 pound coil going down the road and you watch that trailer flex the way it does. And if your butt don't pucker, you need to be a stunt man. Because I'm telling you right now, that is a heavy, heavy coil, and it will turn your truck over right now if you ain't careful.
There was a story of a flatbed driver was going to Cincinnati on I-75 out of Kentucky, hauling a heavy coil going northbound. And he got on the bridge and got into stop traffic, and he had to stop real quick. And he didn't have it chained down the way he's supposed to have.
Right.
Chains broke. When he stopped, the chains broke. The coil rolled up the trailer and right through the sleeper up into the cab.
Well,
and he got out of it. He got hurt, but he was okay. But the bad part of it was he team drove with his wife. She was in the bunk asleep, and that coil rode right over top of that sleeper.
Wow. You know, that's why they call that when you load them coils, you can either load them with the trailer or shotgun style. That's right. Because the hole is pointing back. It looks like a shotgun, or you can haul it what's called suicide. Yep. And when they break and they roll up the trailer like that, that's why they call it loading it suicide right there.
Yep. And that coil rode right through the sleeper up into the cab. Unfortunately, she didn't live through the accident.
Wow. That's tough.
Yeah, I remember when that happened to you. That was pretty bad.
Yeah.
And that rolls over into something else. Don't cut trucks off.
No. Don't even get around him. If you're going to pass a truck, pass him. Don't ride beside him, especially in the rain. Because that driver, if you notice all that spray coming out from under them tires, he can't see. I mean, the rule of thumb is hit your blinker, give it 3 flashes, and start moving over because you can't see.
And have your headlights on the rain too.
Yeah. You stand a better chance if your headlights are on, for sure.
Have you guys had close encounters like people about hitting your truck?
Oh, my God. Yeah, there's several times that I've just about. Now, listen, and Joe can attest to this. I drove 26 years. I've got over 2 million miles. I've never had an accident. I've only had one speeding ticket in my life. And they calculated that as I've been to the moon and back twice, and I've been around the world 40 times. But I have never had an accident, but I have come dang close. Now, I do remember a specific one. I was in Arkansas going across I-40, and they were shutting the lane down, and they had signs for miles: right lane closed, right lane closed. So this old boy, we could finally come up on the barrels where it was closing the lane down, and he tried to get in there before the barrels ended. And I wouldn't give an inch because the way I looked at it, buddy, I read the same signs that you did, and I was over. Well, next thing you know, I start seeing these big orange barrels going, boom, 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 and he was hitting every one of them. What people don't know is some of them are filled halfway up with sand. And it destroyed his Jeep. People just get in a hurry. They just don't mess with trucks, man, because you can die. It's one thing to get hit by a car at, say, 50, 55, 60, 65 mile an hour. But you get hit by a truck that's got, 40,000 pounds in the back of it, you're probably going to die.
Or if you have a tire pop, the
Yeah,
gator goes through your windshield.
that's right. That's right. If you're that close behind, and then I mean, everybody sees those bits of tires laying in the middle of the interstate, and we called them gators, because they look like a alligator laying there. But if one of those come off and flies out from behind their truck and it goes right through your windshield, now you're fighting that. So, but one of the funniest things I ever seen, I was over in Moorhead, Kentucky, and I was driving up the interstate and I seen something in the median. It looked like a big white dog. Closer I got, I was like, man, that's a big dog. Closer I got, and I was like, wait a minute, that ain't a dog. Got a little closer, and it was a white bull running down the median. And I was thinking, dear God, if that thing runs out in front of somebody, somebody's going to die and somebody else is going to get some killer steaks. So, but yeah, I know Joe has too. Yeah, Joe's had many close encounters. I know how, matter of fact, Joe was in a pretty bad wreck one time up in Columbus.
Yeah, that was. I was coming down I-71, going down through the middle of Columbus. When you get in it was pouring rain, storming, raining. I just got unloaded, and I was emptied out, and I right through there. It's 6 lanes, 3 on each side. When you come down 71, you get into Columbus. There's a curve in the middle of town down there. It's a pretty sharp curve in the interstate.
I was going to say it's a pretty sharp curve.
Yeah, on the interstate, and speed limit kicks down to 55. No, 50 or 55 through there. I forget what it is. Well, I was just bebopping down through there, and I slowed down. I slowed down to about 50 mile an hour. And I got into that curve, and the mistake that I made was I had left my jake brake turned on. About the time I got into the curve, I just took my foot off the throttle. And when you do that, the jake brake comes on. Well, it's just like you hit the brakes.
Yeah.
And it raining like that, and that truck went to skidding in that curve. And I fought with it. When it started sliding, I fought with it and got it over on the shoulder. And then when I did, my front tires got into the grass right there, and it jackknifed me. And fortunately, there was nobody around me. There wasn't a car in sight, so that was a good thing. So I didn't hit anybody. I didn't hit anything. Kept it off the Jersey wall. Everything was good. When I come to a stop, I just kind of looked around and I thought, well, phew, avoided a good one there. And fortunately, there was a state trooper that was behind me. I didn't know he was back there, but he seen the whole thing. And so I was sitting there stopped on the shoulder of the road. He comes up and he's knocking on my window. You okay? Are you okay? And I looked out, and I looked out of my driver's side door window, and I was looking right at this policeman. And then I realized, wait a minute, I shouldn't be looking at him. He should be looking up at me, And I opened the door and just stepped out on the ground. And I thought, oh, that's not good. And I realized when it comes to such a stop and it jackknifed, the trailer hit the cab of the truck and knocked the cab of the truck completely off the frame. And the frame just sat down on the ground.
Jeez, oh Pete.
And I said, and the cab was leaned over so far. Now, mind you, it was pouring rain. And the cab was leaned over so far that I was standing up against the truck and wasn't getting wet. I was standing out on the ground with the state trooper,
Right.
and I was just kind of standing up against the truck, and I wouldn't get wet. That's how far it was leaned over.
Wow.
The cabin came completely off.
Lucky.
Yeah, he said, driver, he said, that's the slowest crash I've ever seen. He said, you couldn't have been going more than 30 or 40 mile an hour. And he said, I had fought that thing for almost a quarter of a mile until I finally stopped. He said, how you didn't hit anything is beyond me. You talk about luck, and that's what it was. But, you know, I mean, I drove 11 years. I had around 1,000,000 miles, and it was the only accident I ever had. And it was just luck that nobody was around me.
Yeah, that's true. I've had a lot of close calls though. I almost turned one over in Houston. It's when I was pulling tankers. I pulled tankers for a long time, and if people don't know it, when they put that liquid in them tankers, that liquid moves and it goes frontwards and backwards, frontwards and backwards, and I mean it will beat you to death. I was coming around this curve down there in Houston, and I hit her a little too hard. And everybody behind me saw what was going on, and nobody tried to pass me, which was nothing but luck. Because if somebody would have come up beside me, I would have hit him for sure. But I looked in that mirror. I was making a left-hand turn. I don't know. I was probably going about 50. And I looked and I seen air underneath them tires on that trailer. And I was like, oh, that ain't good. So I was on the brakes in this curve, and all the liquid moved up to the front right where I was making a left-hand turn, which lifted the back driver's side rear tires. So when I saw that, I got off the brake and hit the gas to get that liquid back down to the back. And it settled right down, but now I'm speeding back up in this curve again. So I got to hit the brakes again. And then it did the same thing, but this time the wheels got a little higher. I was like, oh, gosh, this ain't good. And then finally, I come out of that curve, but that's the closest I've ever came ever to turning one over, and the closest I ever came to wrecking. So, but
Well,
yeah,
no,
that was
when you
that.
started tanker, if you'll remember when you started driving tanker, you had a trainer with you that time,
Right.
and you stopped at that red light over at Neil. And when you stopped at the red light, the slosh hit the front of the tank and it pushed you through the red light.
Yes, I do remember that. Yeah, I mean, that's how hard that stuff hits. I mean, if you ain't, you've got to be so smooth to in your shifting and everything to drive a tanker, because it will beat you. It'll make you look like you've never drove before, because if you are sitting at a red light and you take off and all that slosh goes to the back, when you shift gears, all that slosh comes to the front and it will hit you just like a car hits you in the rear end. And then you shift and you start giving it gas. Well, not only is the momentum of that liquid going to the back, your momentum going forward hits it twice as hard, and it will stop you right in the middle of your shift. I mean, just like you hit the brake. So yeah, I mean, tankers, it's wow. You got to be smooth, smooth, smooth.
I know when
But
I was learning how to drive them. First time I stopped at a red light, the slosh hit the front of the tank, and I thought somebody hit me.
it hits hard.
Yeah, it does. I actually thought somebody hit me in the rear end, and I started to, lock my brakes up and hit my parking brake. I started to hit the brake and get out and look, and the trainer that was with me said, "No," he said, "that's the slosh. Just go on."
That's all you can do, man.
Yeah.
That's all you can do. Well, Joe, I think we've probably took up enough time talking about trucking stories. We've got so many, we could probably make another complete show out of this thing.
Yeah.
So, I guess, appreciate you coming on, reminiscing about the old trucking days.
Yep.
And,
And everybody look forward to the new station coming online here in a few weeks.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, don't forget Nighthawk Radio. We'll be there, and look for us on Facebook. And we've already got shows on Facebook on the Facebook page now. Seth, he's put those up for us.
Yep.
So,
And Seth, where else can we be seen and heard?
Uh, you can go to Seth the Soil Guy on TikTok. Um, I'm trying to change my name to Seth's Daily Podcast on there, but it won't let me for some reason. You can find us on YouTube, Seth's Daily Podcast on there. Spotify, Seth's Daily Podcast, and that's it, man.
Cool, man. Yep.
Obviously, you can find us at Nighthawk Radio on Facebook as well. Everybody go like and follow. Uh,
Yeah,
hit
we're going to
both.
have a lot of interesting shows on there. This is just kind of Joe and I reminiscing about the old days, really.
Yeah, I'm a little under the weather right now, so I can't really do too much talking.
Yeah. Seth messaged me earlier, and he's like, "Man, I'm sick."
I really am, man.
I,
Really bad.
I think I tore a tendon in my leg. I could barely walk. So it's like, dear God, I can't wait for this week to end.
all three of us are sick. That's not good.
Hey, if you put us all together, we may make one good person, I guess.
Yeah, poor Seth got poor Seth. He's got explosive diarrhea and been to the bathroom 5 times since we've been on the air.
I've hobbled in and out of the kitchen a couple of times just to get something to drink. And
Tracy, he's
when they were doing the 5 minutes of Joe there at the beginning, Joe said, "Hey, don't you hobble your butt into the kitchen, get you something to drink." That's the best I can do is hobble right now.
Yeah, hopefully you get
So
better, man, for sure. Appreciate
yeah,
everybody watching. Appreciate everybody listening. The radio show has the radio station has a sponsor as well.
that's right. That's right. Um, Tell them all about it, Seth.
Oh, what's the name of the?
No, the one that's sponsoring your show here.
Oh, they don't sponsor this show. This.
Oh, okay. Well, the radio station's got one. Once it gets going, I don't know if we're allowed to announce it yet, seeing how the station ain't going yet, but I'm going to go ahead and do it. It's Dubby Energy Drinks, Dubby, Dubby Energy Drinks. Eventually, we're going to have a link to them, those guys, and start promoting their stuff pretty heavy. So they're out of California.
we'll have a promo code that you can get 10% off their products.
Right, right. Yeah, that's Dubby Energy Drinks. You can look them up on Facebook, Dubby, Dubby Energy Drinks.
Yep.
Seth, take us home, buddy.
Uh, Everybody have a good night and God bless. Check out. We'll have some episodes coming out this week. We'll have a mini cast. Me and Tracy, we do a mini cast every week. Uh, and remember, on our radio station, when we say we're gonna play it, we're gonna play it.
That's
Everybody
right.
have a good night and God bless.